The summer heat hung in the air as people gathered at Riverside Park for the Saturday afternoon concert. Families spread blankets on the grass, couples sat close on benches, and children chased each other around the open spaces. Near the gazebo at the center of the park, a jazz band was setting up their equipment, connecting cables, adjusting microphone stands, and arranging sheet music on metal stands that gleamed in the afternoon sun. Among the crowd stood a boy of 12, thin and tall for his age, wearing faded jeans and a blue t-shirt that had seen better days. His eyes never left the piano being wheeled into position at the center of the gazebo. The instrument gleamed black and perfect under the sunlight, its ivory keys promising magic that the boy had only ever dreamed about. His name was Andre, and music lived inside him like a second heartbeat. For as long as he could remember, Andre had been drawn to melodies. He hummed while doing homework, tapped rhythms on his desk at school, and spent hours with his ear pressed against the wall of the apartment next door when their neighbor played old records. But his single mom worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads in their small apartment on the east side of town. Piano lessons were an impossible luxury, and even a second-hand keyboard remained firmly in the category of someday. Instead, Andre had drawn a paper keyboard on cardboard, carefully measuring and coloring each key. He'd taped it to his desk and practiced silent songs every day after school, his fingers dancing across the motionless keys while he heard the music perfectly in his mind. He'd watched countless online tutorials using the old laptop at the public library, memorizing finger positions and chord progressions without ever feeling the weight of a real key beneath his fingertips. Andre hung back as the musicians continued their setup. The piano player, a man with salt and pepper hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose, arranged his music sheets just so, then stepped away to help the drummer with a stubborn cymbal stand. The boy's heart pounded. The piano sat unattended, bathed in sunlight, almost glowing with possibility. He'd never done anything like this before. Andre was the quiet kid who sat in the back of the classroom, who helped younger children with their homework at the community center, who always said please and thank you and never caused trouble. But today something pulled him forward, one slow step after another until he stood at the edge of the gazebo. "Excuse me," he said to a woman adjusting a saxophone strap. His voice came out as barely more than a whisper, and she didn't hear him. Andre cleared his throat and tried again, louder this time. "Excuse me, ma'am?" The woman turned, eyebrows raised in question. She had warm brown skin and hair pulled back in a colorful scarf. "Yes? Can I help you?" Andre's mouth went dry. The words he'd rehearsed in his head on the walk to the park suddenly evaporated. Behind the woman, other band members glanced over curiously. I was wondering." He swallowed hard and gestured toward the piano. "Could I maybe try it, just for a minute?" The saxophone player looked surprised, then glanced at the piano and back to Andre. "You play, young man?" Andre's hands twisted the hem of his t-shirt. "Not on a real one. I practice at home, but I've never touched a real piano." The admission felt both embarrassing and important, like revealing a secret he'd kept hidden for years. The woman's expression softened slightly, but she shook her head. "I'm sorry, but this is professional equipment and we're about to start our performance in 20 minutes. "I understand," Andre said quickly, already backing away, cheeks burning with embarrassment. "I'm sorry to bother you." "Hold on," called a deep voice. The piano player had returned and stood watching the exchange with curious eyes. "You practice without a piano?" Andre stopped. "Yes, sir. I drew one on cardboard. I watch videos and practice that way." The band members exchanged glances. The drummer, a stocky man with a trimmed beard, let out a low whistle. "That's dedication." "What's your name, kid?" asked the piano player. "Andre, sir." "I'm Roy," the man said, stepping forward and extending his hand. Andre shook it, his smaller hand disappearing into Roy's grip. "And what would you play if I let you sit at those keys for a minute?" Andre's heart skipped. Was this really happening? "I know Autumn Leaves, it's my favorite." Roy's eyebrows shot up. That's not exactly Mary Had a Little Lamb. That's a complex piece. I know all the chord progressions, Andre said earnestly. I've been practicing it for months. The saxophone player frowned. Roy, we need to finish setting up. The sound check. Will take 5 minutes, Denise. Roy finished for her, still studying Andre with interest. And we've got 20. He turned to the boy. One song. Quick. Really? Andre breathed. Really. But just one. Denise sighed but stepped back. The other band members, the drummer, a bass player, and a trumpeter, paused in their preparations to watch. Andre approached the piano like someone might approach a wild animal, with reverence and caution. He slid onto the bench, his feet barely reaching the pedals. The keys before him were no longer imaginary lines on cardboard but cool, smooth ivory and ebony waiting for his touch. He placed his hands in position, exactly as he'd practiced countless times. But now, sitting before a real piano, doubt crept in. What if all his practice on cardboard meant nothing? What if he embarrassed himself in front of these professional musicians and the gathering crowd? Roy must have sensed his hesitation. It's just you and the piano right now, kid. Everything else falls away when you play. That's the magic of it. Andre nodded, took a deep breath, and pressed down on the first chord. The sound that filled the air was nothing like he'd imagined. It was fuller, richer, alive in a way that the music in his head could never be. His left hand found the bass notes while his right picked out the melody. At first, his playing was hesitant, his fingers stiff, with nerves, but then something shifted. The months of silent practice of imagining this very moment took over. His hands remembered what to do even if they'd never done it before on a real instrument. The melody of Autumn Leaves flowed from the piano, filling the gazebo and drifting. Out into the park, Andre forgot about the band watching him. He forgot about the people in the park who had stopped to listen. He forgot about everything except the feeling of the music flowing through him and out through his fingertips. Each note felt right, felt necessary, felt like a word in a language he'd always known but never spoken aloud until now. He added little flourishes that weren't in the original piece, bits of himself woven into the classic song. His body swayed slightly with the rhythm, his eyes half closed in concentration and joy. When the final notes faded away, Andre sat still for a moment, not wanting to break the spell. Then he became aware of the silence around him. He looked up, nervously, to find the entire band staring at him, with expressions ranging from shock to amazement. That was, Roy began, then shook his head as if words failed him. Incredible, finished the trumpeter, a woman with short hair and wide eyes. Kid, how old did you say you were? 12, Andre answered quietly, suddenly self-conscious again. The bass player let out a low whistle. And you learned that on a cardboard keyboard? Andre nodded, sliding off the bench. Thank you for letting me play. It was everything I thought it would be. Roy placed a hand on Andre's shoulder, his expression serious. Son, I've been playing piano for 30 years, and I've taught dozens of students. What you just did isn't normal. That kind of natural talent is rare. Very rare, Denise agreed, her earlier reluctance gone. How long have you been practicing like this? About 2 years, Andre said. Since I was 10, I used the free computers at the library to watch tutorials. The band members exchanged meaningful glances. Roy knelt down to look Andre in the eye. Would you like to stay for our performance? You could sit right here next to the gazebo. Andre's eyes widened. Really? I'd love that. And maybe, Roy continued, you could tell me more about how you taught yourself after the show. I'd like to hear about your methods. Andre nodded enthusiastically, happiness bubbling up inside him. This was already the best day of his life, and from the thoughtful expressions on the musicians' faces, it might be just the beginning of something even more incredible. As the band returned to their preparation with renewed energy, Andre stood by the side of the gazebo, his fingers still tingling from the memory of real piano keys. Sometimes life changed in big, dramatic ways, with natural disasters or sudden moves or family emergencies. But sometimes, he realized, life changed because you found the courage to ask for something that seemed impossible. Today he had touched a real piano for the first time. Tomorrow? Tomorrow suddenly seemed full of possibilities that hadn't existed this morning. Around him, the park continued its Saturday rhythm. But for Andre, the world had shifted on its axis. Music had always lived inside him like a dream. Now, for the first time, he dared to believe it might become his reality. Andre sat on a folding chair just off to the side of the gazebo, close enough to see Roy's hands move across the piano keys during the performance. The crowd had grown larger now, with people standing 3 deep behind the seated audience members. The summer air buzzed with conversation and anticipation. As the band began their first number, a lively jazz standard that had people tapping their feet, Andre studied every movement Roy made, the way he positioned his hands, how he used the pedals, the slight nod he gave to the drummer to signal a change in tempo. All of it was like watching a master class that Andre had only dreamed of attending. Between songs, Roy glanced over at Andre and winked. The boy grinned back, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. For the first time, he wasn't just listening to music or imagining playing it. He was part of the experience, welcomed into this world he had admired from afar for so long. During the band's break, Roy brought Andre a bottle of water and sat down beside him. "What did you think?" Roy asked, taking a sip from his own bottle. "Amazing," Andre breathed. "The way you all play together, like you can read each other's minds." Roy laughed. "That comes with practice. Lots and lots of practice. We've been playing together for 7 years now." Andre nodded, thinking about his own solitary practice sessions with his cardboard keyboard. How different it must be to create music with others, to be part of something bigger than yourself. "Tell me about your situation," Roy said, his voice gentler now. "Your family, how you got into music." Andre looked down at his worn sneakers. "It's just me and my mom. She works really hard, mornings at the hospital cafeteria and evenings cleaning offices downtown. We don't have much extra for things like music lessons or instruments." "And how did you get interested in piano?" Andre's eyes lit up. "Our next-door neighbor, Mr. Lee. He plays old jazz records on Sunday afternoons. When I was little, I'd press my ear against the wall to listen." He smiled at the memory. "One day, he caught me in the hallway and invited me in to listen properly. He told me stories about all the great musicians while the records played." Roy nodded, understanding in his eyes. "And the cardboard keyboard? How did that start?" "I saw a real piano at school in the music room. The teacher let me try it once, and I couldn't stop thinking about it after that. So I drew one to practice on. I measured everything carefully so the keys would be the right size." Roy shook his head in amazement. "And you taught yourself Autumn Leaves on that?" Andre nodded. "And other songs too. I watch videos at the library, and then practice at home. I close my eyes and imagine the sounds." The rest of the band had gathered around now, listening to their conversation. Denise, the saxophone player, exchanged a look with Roy that Andre couldn't quite interpret. "Kid, you've got something special," said the drummer, whose name Andre had learned was Luis. "What you did earlier, that wasn't just good technique. You've got feeling in your playing. Soul, you can't teach that." Andre felt his cheeks warm at the praise. "Thank you, sir." "We should get back to the second set," Denise said, checking her watch. "People are waiting." Roy stood up but hesitated, looking at Andre thoughtfully. Then he seemed to make a decision. "How would you like to play with us?" he asked. "Just one song." Andre's mouth fell open. "What? Play with the band? In front of everyone?" "Why not?" Roy said with a shrug that didn't quite hide his excitement. "We could do Autumn Leaves since you already know it. I'll back you up on the piano for support, but you'll take the lead." I don't know if I can," Andre stammered, looking at the crowd of at least 100 people. "You already showed us you can play," Louis said. "And trust me, playing with a band behind you is 10 times better than playing alone." Andre looked at each of their faces. Roy's encouraging smile, Denise's thoughtful expression, Luis's nod of approval, the bassist and trumpeters' curious looks. They believed he could do this. These professional musicians thought he was good enough to play with them. "Okay," he whispered, then cleared his throat and said more firmly, "Okay, I'll try." Roy clapped him on the shoulder. "That's the spirit. We'll make it the last song before our final break. That gives you about 30 minutes to prepare mentally." As the band retook their positions and began the second set, Andre's stomach twisted with a mixture of excitement and terror. He watched the audience enjoying the music, completely unaware that he, a 12-year-old boy with no formal training, would soon be joining the professional band on stage. What would they think? Would they laugh? Would he freeze up and forget everything he knew? His palms grew sweaty as the minutes ticked by and each completed song brought him closer to his public debut. During the second-to-last song, Roy motioned for Andre to come up to the gazebo. On shaky legs, the boy climbed the 3 steps and stood awkwardly at the edge of the performance space while the band finished their number. The audience applauded, and then Roy stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special treat for you today," he announced. "We've discovered an extraordinary young talent right here in our community. This young man has taught himself to play piano without even having access to a real instrument." A murmur of interest went through the crowd. Andre felt dozens of eyes turn to look at him. "He's going to join us for our next number, Autumn Leaves. Please welcome Andre to the stage." The audience applauded politely, though Andre could see curiosity and skepticism on some faces. Who was this kid? What was he doing on stage with the professionals? Roy guided Andre to the piano bench and sat beside him, leaving enough room for both of them. "I'll support you with some bass notes, but this is your show," he said quietly. "Just like before, it's just you and the piano. Everything else falls away." Andre nodded, his throat too dry to speak. Roy counted them in softly, and Andre placed his hands on the keys. The first notes were tentative, his fingers stiff with nerves. From the corner of his eye, he could see people in the audience exchanging glances. But then, just as before, something shifted. The music took over. Andre felt the melody flow through him, and this time it was even better because he wasn't alone. Luis added gentle brushwork on the drums. The bassist found Andre's rhythm and complemented it perfectly. Denise's saxophone added soulful responses to his melody line, and the trumpeter added soft accents in just the right places. It was like being carried on a wave of sound. Andre's confidence grew with each measure. He added little improvised flourishes, and to his delight, the band followed his lead, adapting to his interpretation of the classic song. Roy occasionally added supporting chords, but mostly just watched with undisguised amazement as Andre took command of the piece. When Andre finally played the closing notes, there was a moment of complete silence in the park. Then the audience erupted in applause and cheers. People stood up, clapping enthusiastically. Someone whistled. Andre looked up, stunned by the response. Roy was beaming beside him. "Take a bow, maestro," he whispered. "You've earned it." On wobbly legs, Andre stood and gave an awkward bow. The applause grew even louder. He had never experienced anything like this feeling. The rush of connecting with an audience, of moving people with music that came from somewhere deep inside him. As he stepped back from the piano, the band members were all smiling. Denise, who had seemed the most skeptical earlier, gave him a respectful nod. "I've been playing for 20 years, she said during the break that followed, "and I've never seen anything quite like what you just did, especially knowing you taught yourself on cardboard." "It was real today," Andre said, still buzzing with adrenaline. "The music was always in my head, but today I could actually hear it." The band exchanged looks again, and this time Andre could tell they were having some kind of silent conversation. "Listen, Andre," Roy said finally, "we need to talk to your mother. Where does she work?" "At Memorial Hospital cafeteria until 3, then at the Peterson building downtown from 6 to midnight," Andre replied, confused by the question. "Why?" "Because we have a proposition for her," Roy said. "And for you." "What kind of proposition?" Andre asked, his heart beginning to race again. Roy smiled. Let's just say that cardboard keyboard of yours might be getting an upgrade very soon. Andre stared at him, hardly daring to believe what Roy seemed to be suggesting. Could this day possibly get any more incredible? But first, Roy continued, would you like to join us for our final set? You don't have to play solo again if you don't want to, but you could sit in with us, maybe add some simple accompaniment on a couple of numbers. Andre nodded eagerly, words failing him completely now. As the band prepared for their final set, Andre caught sight of a woman recording the performance on her phone. She smiled at him and gave him a thumbs up. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Andre wondered if this moment, this incredible, impossible moment, might end up online somewhere, perhaps inspiring another kid with dreams bigger than their circumstances. He hoped so, because if today had taught him anything, it was that sometimes the most amazing things happened when you found the courage to ask for what seemed impossible. The sun was beginning to set as the band finished their final song. The applause from the crowd washed over them like a wave, and Andre couldn't stop smiling. He had sat in with the band for their entire last set, adding simple piano parts where Roy showed him how, watching and learning in between. His fingers were tired in the best possible way. As people began packing up blankets and folding chairs, several audience members approached the gazebo. They wanted to meet the young piano player they'd just witnessed. Andre shook hands with strangers who told him he was gifted and remarkable. An older gentleman with silver hair told him he reminded him of a young Herbie Hancock. Andre nodded politely, though he wasn't sure who that was. Another gap in his musical knowledge he was eager to fill. Time to pack up, Roy announced after the last audience members had drifted away. The band began dismantling their equipment, a well-practiced routine of disconnecting cables and folding stands. What happens to the piano? Andre asked, running his hand along its shiny surface one last time. Back to the music store, Roy said, helping the trumpeter, whose name was Tina, pack her instrument. We rent it for our outdoor shows. Andre nodded, trying not to look disappointed. The thought of going back to his cardboard keyboard, after experiencing the real thing, was harder than he'd expected. But before that, Roy continued, we need to talk to your mom. When does she finish her shift at the hospital? Andre checked the old watch his mother had given him for his last birthday. About 20 minutes ago. She'll be home for a couple hours before her evening job. Perfect, Roy said. Where do you live? Is it close enough to walk? Pinewood Apartments. It's about 15 minutes that way. Andre pointed east. Roy nodded. Luis has a van. We can drive you. All of you? Andre asked, looking at the 5 band members. Denise smiled. All of us, if that's okay with you. Andre couldn't believe it. These professional musicians wanted to talk to his mother, about him, about his playing. His heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She's going to be really surprised, he warned them. I've never brought anyone home before, especially not a whole band. We'll be on our best behavior, Luis promised, closing up his drum case. Promise. 20 minutes later, Luis's old blue van pulled up outside Pinewood Apartments. The building was worn around the edges, paint peeling in places, a broken swing in the small playground area. But the grounds were clean and someone had planted flowers around the entrance. Andre led the band up to the 3rd floor, apartment 07. He hesitated before unlocking the door, suddenly aware of how small their apartment would seem to these adults. Would they judge his home? His mother? Mom? He called as he pushed the door open. I'm home. And, I brought some people to meet you. Andre's mother appeared from the kitchen area, drying her hands on a dish towel. She was a petite woman with the same warm brown eyes as her son. She wore jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her expression shifted from welcome to confusion as she saw the group of strangers behind her son. Andre? What's going on? Who are these people? Andre stepped inside, the band members filing in behind him. The small living room suddenly felt very crowded. Mom, these are musicians from the park. They play jazz there on Saturdays. This is Roy and Denise and Luis and Tina and Bo, he said, pointing to each in turn. And they let me play the piano today. His mother's confusion deepened. Play the piano? What piano? Maybe we should explain, Roy said gently, stepping forward and extending his hand. I'm Roy Wilson. I play piano with the Riverside Jazz Collective. Your son approached us before our show today and asked if he could try our piano. Andre's mother, whose name was Leona, shook Roy's hand automatically, her eyes moving from the strangers to her son and back again. I don't understand. Andre doesn't play piano. That's just it, ma'am, Denise said. He does. Remarkably well for someone who's never had lessons. Leona frowned. There must be some mistake. We don't have a piano. We've never had one. Andre stepped forward. Mom, remember the keyboard I drew? On the cardboard? I've been practicing on it, watching videos at the library to learn. Understanding dawned on Leona's face. That's what that was? I thought it was just a drawing for a school project. I've been practicing every day after school, Andre said quietly, for 2 years now. Leona looked at her son with new eyes, as if seeing a different person than the one who had left the apartment that morning. And you played for these people? On a real piano? The band members all nodded and Roy spoke up. Not just played, Mrs. He paused, realizing he didn't know her last name. Taylor, she supplied. But please call me Leona. Leona, Roy continued, your son didn't just play, he performed, with feeling and technical skill that frankly shouldn't be possible for someone who's been practicing on cardboard. He performed with us, Luis added, in front of the whole park, got a standing ovation. Leona sank down onto the sofa, her expression a mixture of disbelief and pride. Andre, why didn't you tell me? Andre shrugged, looking at his feet. I didn't think it mattered. It wasn't like we could afford a real piano or lessons. The pain that flashed across Leona's face made Andre immediately regret his words. I'm sorry, Mom, I didn't mean… No, she said softly. You're right. We couldn't afford those things. I wish we could have. She looked up at the band members. But I still don't understand why you're all here. Roy glanced at his bandmates, who nodded encouragingly. We have a proposition. Your son has a gift, Mrs. Taylor. A rare, natural talent that deserves to be nurtured. The kind of talent that comes along maybe once in a generation, Tina added. We want to help, Denise said simply. Leona looked wary. Help how? I teach piano at the community college, Roy explained. I'd like to give Andre free lessons, twice a week to start. And I manage a music store downtown. Bo, the bassist, spoke up for the first time. We have used keyboards that people trade in for upgrades. There's a decent Yamaha that's been sitting in the back room for months. Andre could have it, no charge, and we'd like him to continue sitting in with the band, Luis added, if that's okay with you. We play every Saturday at the park through October, then we move to the Blue Note Cafe for the winter months. Leona looked overwhelmed. I don't know what to say, this is very generous, but… Mom, Andre interrupted, his voice trembling with excitement. You should have seen it. When I played with them, it was like everything made sense, like I finally found something I'm good at. Really good at. Leona studied her son's face, the hope there, the excitement, the pleading in his eyes. You really want this? Andre nodded. More than anything. Leona was quiet for a moment, thinking, I'd need to see these lessons. And this cafe you mentioned, is it appropriate for a 12-year-old? Completely family-friendly, Roy assured her. No alcohol, just coffee and desserts. And you're welcome to attend any and all lessons. In fact, I'd encourage it. And there's really no catch, Leona asked, still skeptical. No hidden fees or obligations? The band members shook their heads. Just one condition, Roy said. Andre has to promise to practice, real practice, with discipline and focus. Oh, he will, Leona said, a small smile finally breaking through. If I know my son, that won't be a problem at all. Andre could hardly contain himself. Was this really happening? Were these adults really offering him everything he dreamed of? Can I really have a keyboard? he asked Bo. A real one with keys that actually make sound? Bo laughed. You sure can. We can go get it right now if your mom agrees. Leona nodded, still looking slightly dazed by the turn of events. I suppose that would be all right. Andre whooped with joy, then quickly composed himself when everyone laughed. Sorry, it's just, this is the best day of my life. Mine too, Leona said softly, watching her son with wonder. I had no idea you had this in you, baby. Sometimes kids surprise you, Denise said with a smile. They're developing parts of themselves you can't always see. Well, let's go get that keyboard, Bo suggested. Luis, you mind driving us to the store? Not at all, Luis replied. We can fit it in the van, no problem. As they headed out, Leona pulled Andre aside for a moment. Are you sure about these people? She whispered. We don't really know them. Andre looked over at the band members, who were waiting by the door talking among themselves. I'm sure, Mom. They're good people. You should have seen how they treated me, like I was one of them, like I belonged. Leona studied her son's face, then nodded. Okay. I trust your judgment. She straightened his collar. Now let's go get you that keyboard. The drive to the music store was filled with conversation about jazz, musicians Andre should listen to, books he should read. Every word was like water to someone who'd been wandering in a desert. He soaked it all in, asking questions, storing away names and titles for future library visits. The music store was closing when they arrived, but Bo had keys. He let them in and led them to the back room where used instruments were stored. Here it is, he said, pulling a dust cover off a keyboard. Yamaha DGX 660. It's a few years old, but in perfect condition. Weighted keys, so it feels like a real piano. Built-in speakers. Even has headphones so you can practice without disturbing anyone. Andre stared at it in awe. It wasn't a grand piano like the one in the park, but to him, it might as well have been made of gold. Can I try? Bo plugged it in and turned it on. All yours. Andre sat down on the small bench and placed his fingers on the keys. The feeling was different from the acoustic piano. These keys had a bit more resistance and the sound came from speakers rather than strings, but it was still magical to him. He began to play Autumn Leaves again, the song that had changed his life earlier that day. As the familiar melody filled the store, he closed his eyes and let himself imagine what tomorrow would bring, and the day after that, and all the days to come. Days that would now be filled with real music, real learning, and real possibilities. 3 months had passed since that life-changing Saturday in the park. The leaves were starting to turn golden and red, and a crisp autumn breeze rustled through the trees as Andre walked home from school. His backpack was heavy with textbooks, but his mind was elsewhere, focused on the piece he was learning for. His lesson with Roy tomorrow. The keyboard now occupied the corner of their small living room, positioned so that Andre could look out the window while he practiced. And practice he did, every day after school for at least 2 hours, often more on weekends. Sometimes Leona would find him still playing when she got home from her evening job, having lost all track of time in the music. How was school? Leona asked when Andre walked through the door. She had Wednesdays off from the hospital cafeteria, though she would still need to go to her evening cleaning job later. Fine, Andre replied, dropping his backpack and heading straight for the keyboard. Mr. Patterson gave us a ton of math homework, but I think I can finish it before my lesson tomorrow. Leona smiled at her son's single-minded focus. Don't you want a snack first? Andre paused, his fingers already hovering over the keys. Maybe in a bit. I really want to work on this chord progression Roy taught me last time. 20 minutes of homework first, Leona countered. Then you can play until dinner. Andre sighed but nodded. Deal. As he pulled out his math textbook, Leona watched him, with a mixture of pride and amazement. The past 3 months had brought changes she never could have predicted. The shy, quiet boy who used to spend hours alone in his room had blossomed into someone more confident, more engaged with the world around him. Music had given him not just a skill but an identity. Andre's twice-weekly lessons with Roy had quickly expanded to include music theory classes at the community college, where Roy had arranged a special exception for the young student. Every Saturday, Andre performed with the Riverside Jazz Collective, starting with simple accompaniment but gradually taking on more complex parts and even short solos. Videos of the Cardboard Keyboard Kid had spread across social media, bringing larger crowds to the park concerts. Last week, a local news station had even done a short feature on him. The reporter had seemed genuinely moved by the story of the boy who had taught himself on a homemade keyboard, and the band who had taken him under their wing. The day after the segment aired, 3 different people had approached Leona in the hospital cafeteria to tell her how inspired they were by her son. Andre finished his math homework in record time and was soon lost in his music. Leona started, preparing dinner, smiling as she listened to him work through difficult passages, repeating them until they flowed smoothly. His dedication was something to behold. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Roy. "Evening, Leona. Hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "Not at all," she replied, lowering the heat under the pot of stew she was making. "Andre's just practicing. Did you need to reschedule tomorrow's lesson?" "Actually, no. This is about something else." Roy paused. "I've been contacted by someone who saw the news segment about Andre, a professor from the Wellington Academy of Music." Leona's hand tightened on the phone. The Wellington Academy was the most prestigious music school in the state, possibly in the entire region. It was where wealthy families sent their children to become professional musicians. "What did they want?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "They want to meet Andre. They're interested in offering him a scholarship for their youth program." Leona nearly dropped the phone. "A scholarship to Wellington?" "Yes," Roy confirmed. "Full tuition. It's quite an opportunity, Leona." She sank into a kitchen chair, her mind racing. "But Wellington is all the way across town. It's at least an hour by bus each way." "I know it's a lot to consider," Roy said. The professor, Dr. Chen, asked if she could come to the park this Saturday to hear Andre play with us. After that, she'd like to meet with both of you to discuss possibilities. Through the doorway, Leona could see Andre at the keyboard, completely absorbed in the music, his face peaceful and focused in a way she rarely saw at any other time. "What do you think, Roy? You've been teaching him. Is he really that good?" Roy's voice was gentle but firm. "Leona, in 30 years of teaching, I've never seen anyone like your son. His technical skills are impressive, especially given his lack of formal training. But it's more than that. He has something you can't teach, an intuitive understanding of music, a natural expressiveness that most players work years to develop." Leona felt tears prick her eyes. "I had no idea," she whispered. "All this time he had this gift, and I never knew." "Don't blame yourself," Roy said. "How could you have known? The important thing is that he's getting the chance to develop it now." After hanging up, Leona sat quietly for a few minutes, watching her son play. What would this mean for him? For them? Wellington Academy was in the wealthy part of town, where kids drove expensive cars and took summer trips to Europe. How would her son, with his second-hand clothes and free lunch card, fit in there? But then again, how could she deny him this opportunity? "Andre," she called finally. "Dinner in 5 minutes, and we need to talk about something." Saturday arrived clear and cool. The park was more crowded than usual for the band's performance. Word had spread that Dr. Chen from Wellington Academy would be there to hear the Cardboard Keyboard Kid, and it seemed like half the neighborhood had turned out to support him. Andre sat at the piano, his fingers trembling slightly as he warmed up. He was playing a piece he had been working on with Roy, a challenging jazz arrangement that showcased both technical skill and improvisational ability. "Nervous?" Roy asked, adjusting his sheet music on the stand beside Andre. "A little," Andre admitted. "What if she doesn't like how I play?" Roy placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Just play the way you always do. Play what you feel. That's what makes your music special." Andre nodded, taking a deep breath. From her seat in the front row, Leona gave him an encouraging smile. Beside her sat a slender Asian woman in a tailored blazer, Dr. Chen, the Wellington professor. Her expression was pleasant but unreadable as she waited for the performance to begin. As the band began to play, Andre felt the familiar transformation take place. His nervousness melted away, replaced by total immersion in the music. His fingers found the keys without conscious thought, responding to the rhythm and energy of the other musicians. When his solo came, he closed his eyes and let the music flow through him, building on the melody in ways that felt right, that felt true. The applause when they finished seemed louder than usual. Andre opened his eyes to see the audience on their feet. Dr. Chen was still seated, but she was nodding slowly, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. After the show, Leona brought Dr. Chen to meet Andre. Up close, her eyes were kind, but evaluating, taking in every detail of the young musician. "That was quite impressive," she said, shaking Andre's hand. "Roy tells me you've only been playing on a real instrument for 3 months?" Andre nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Before that, it was just my cardboard keyboard." Dr. Chen raised her eyebrows. "And you taught yourself using videos?" "Yes, ma'am, at the library." She shook her head slightly as if still processing this information. "Well, you clearly have an exceptional gift. I'd like to talk with you and your mother about the possibility of you joining our youth program at Wellington Academy." Andre's heart leapt. "Really? We offer scholarships to a small number of exceptionally talented students each year," Dr. Chen explained. "The program includes private lessons, music theory classes, ensemble work, and performance opportunities. It's quite rigorous." "He's up for it," Roy interjected. "He's the most dedicated student I've ever taught." Dr. Chen smiled. "So I've heard. Shall we discuss the details over coffee? There's a cafe just down the street." As they walked to the cafe, Andre felt like he was floating. Wellington Academy, the school whose students won national competitions, who went on to Juilliard and Berklee College of Music. The school he had never even dreamed of attending, because it seemed so far out of reach. Over hot chocolate, for Andre, and coffee, for the adults, Dr. Chen outlined what the scholarship would entail: classes 3 afternoons a week and Saturday mornings, a practice requirement of at least 2 hours daily, quarterly recitals, and participation in the Academy's youth jazz ensemble. Transportation might be an issue, Leona said hesitantly. "We're across town and I work during most of those times." "We have a network of parent volunteers who carpool," Dr. Chen assured her, "and in some cases we can arrange transportation stipends." "And the scholarship? It covers everything?" Leona asked. "Because honestly, we couldn't manage even the small fees." "Everything," Dr. Chen confirmed. "Tuition, materials, even the required performance attire. We want to remove any barriers for students with Andre's level of talent." Andre looked at his mother, hardly daring to breathe. This was everything he hadn't even known to wish for 3 months ago. Leona met his eyes. Seeing the hope there, the barely contained excitement, she nodded slightly. "When would he start?" she asked Dr. Chen. "We have an opening now," the professor replied. "He could begin as early as next week if that works for you." Andre couldn't hold back anymore. "Mom, please. I want this so much." Leona reached over and squeezed his hand. "Then it's settled. My son is going to Wellington Academy." Dr. Chen smiled. "Excellent. I'll have the paperwork sent over tomorrow." She turned to Andre. "I expect great things from you, young man." As they walked home later, Andre was unusually quiet, his expression thoughtful. "Having second thoughts?" Leona asked. He shook his head. "No, just thinking about how different everything is now. 3 months ago, I was playing on cardboard thinking I might never touch a real piano. And now..." He looked up at his mother. "Do you think I can really do this? Go to Wellington and everything?" Leona put her arm around his shoulders. "I know. You can. You've already done the impossible. Everything from here is just the next step." Andre smiled. "I just don't want to let anyone down." You, Roy, and the band, Dr. Chen. The only person you need to worry about is yourself, Leona said firmly. This is your journey. We're all just here to help you along the way. As they reached their apartment building, Andre looked up at the fading afternoon light. Whatever came next, Wellington Academy performances, who knew what else? He was ready for it. The music that had always lived inside him now had a path forward, a way to grow and develop and become everything it was meant to be. And it had all started with a simple question. Can I try your piano? 2 years had passed since Andre first stepped into Wellington Academy of Music. The nervous 12-year-old with the cardboard keyboard was now 14, taller, with a quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly where he belonged in the Ibanda world. It was a crisp spring evening and the concert hall at Wellington Academy was packed to capacity. Parents, teachers, fellow students, and music lovers from across the city had gathered for the annual spring showcase featuring the Academy's most talented students. Andre's name was listed last on the program. The closing performance, a Diazide spot usually reserved for the student who had shown the most growth and promise that year. Backstage, Andre adjusted his tie and smoothed down the front of his dark blue suit, a gift from Roy and the band for his 14th birthday. Through a gap in the curtain, he could see his mother in the front row, sitting between Denise and Luis. The entire Riverside Jazz Collective had come to support him, taking the night off from their regular gig at the Blue Note Cafe. Nervous? Asked a voice behind him. Andre turned to see Dr. Chen, elegant as always in a simple black dress, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. A little, he admitted. It's a big piece. Dr. Chen nodded. Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue is ambitious, even with the shortened arrangement. But if anyone can handle it, you can. The piece had been Andre's choice, a bold one for a 14-year-old pianist with only 2 years of formal training. But something about the composition, with its blend of classical structure and jazz improvisation, had spoken to him from the first time he heard it. Dr. Chen had been skeptical at first, but had eventually agreed to let him attempt it for the showcase. 5 minutes, Andre, called the stage manager. Dr. Chen gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze. Remember what we talked about. Technical precision is important, but it's the feeling you bring to the music that will move people. Play from your heart. Andre nodded, taking a deep breath. 2 years of intensive training had refined his natural talent, giving him the technical skills to match his intuitive feel for music. But tonight, he wanted to do more than show off his technique. He wanted the audience to feel what he felt when he played, the joy, the freedom, the sense of endless possibility. On stage, a young violinist finished her piece to enthusiastic applause. After she took her bow, the stagehands wheeled out the gleaming black grand piano for Andre's performance. The stage manager appeared at Andre's elbow. You're up, kid. Knock 'em dead. Heart pounding, Andre walked onto the stage. The applause was polite but expectant. Most of the audience had never heard him play before. Only a small section in the front, where his mother and the band sat, clapped with genuine enthusiasm, Roy's fingers in his mouth as he let out an encouraging whistle. Andre took his seat at the piano, adjusting the bench to the right height. He looked out at the sea of faces, momentarily overwhelmed by how far he had come. Then his eyes found his mother's. She gave him a small nod, her face a mixture of pride and love. It was all the encouragement he needed. He placed his hands on the keys and began to play. The famous opening glissando of Rhapsody in Blue, a sliding run up the keyboard, rang out through the concert hall. Andre had practiced it hundreds of times, but playing it now in front of this audience felt electric. He moved into the main themes of the piece, his fingers dancing across the keys with growing confidence. As he played, memories flashed through his mind. The cardboard keyboard taped to his desk. The first time his fingers touched a real piano in the park. Roy's patient guidance during their lessons. His mother's face when he was accepted to Wellington. His first recital, terrified but determined. Each memory, each step of the journey, seemed to flow into the music, giving it a depth and emotion that went beyond the notes on the page. In the sections that allowed for improvisation, Andre added flourishes that were uniquely his, little jazz riffs and bluesy turns that made the classical piece his own. The final crescendo approached, the music building to its triumphant conclusion. Andre poured everything he had into those last measures, his body swaying with the rhythm, his face a study in complete absorption. As he struck the final chord, letting it resonate through the hall, there was a moment of absolute silence. Then, the audience erupted. People rose to their feet, applauding wildly. Someone shouted, "Bravo!" from the back of the hall. Andre stood somewhat dazed by the response and took a bow. As he straightened, he saw his mother wiping tears from her eyes, while Roy and the band members clapped until their hands must have hurt. Backstage, after the showcase ended, Andre was surrounded by well-wishers, other students, parents, teachers from the academy. Dr. Chen made her way through the crowd to reach him. "That," she said, her usual reserve cracking to reveal, genuine emotion, "was extraordinary. You've exceeded all our expectations, Andre." Before he could respond, Andre was enveloped in a hug from his mother. "I'm so proud of you," Leona whispered, her voice thick with tears. So proud." Over her shoulder, Andre saw Roy and the band, approaching, all grinning widely. "Kids got game," Louis said, giving Andre a fist bump when Leona released him. "Not bad for someone who started on cardboard," Denise added with a wink. Roy hung back slightly, watching his student with quiet pride. When the others had finished congratulating Andre, he stepped forward. "You've come a long way," he said simply. Andre nodded. "Thanks to you. All of you." He looked around at the circle of people who had made his journey possible. His mother, who had worked extra shifts to accommodate his rehearsal schedule. Roy, who had recognized his talent and opened the first door. The band, who had welcomed him as one of their own. Dr. Chen, who had given him the opportunity to study at Wellington. "There's someone else who'd like to speak with you," Dr. Chen said, gesturing toward a tall man in an expensive suit who stood a few feet away. "Andre, this is Mr. Patterson. He's on the board of the National Youth Music Foundation." The man stepped forward, extending his hand. "Remarkable performance, young man. Truly remarkable." Andre shook his hand, suddenly feeling shy again. "Thank you, sir. I'd like to discuss something with you and your mother if you have a moment," Mr. Patterson continued. "The foundation sponsors a summer program at Berklee College of Music for exceptional young musicians. It's quite selective. Only 20 students nationwide are chosen each year. After what I heard tonight, I'd like to nominate you for one of those spots." Andre stared at him, unable to form words. Berklee College of Music, one of the most prestigious music schools in the country. A summer program there would mean learning from world-class musicians, networking with industry professionals, opening doors he hadn't even known existed. That's incredible," Leona said, stepping in when she realized Andre was speechless. "Thank you for considering him." "The program includes all expenses," Mr. Patterson added. "Airfare to Boston, accommodations, meals, materials. Everything is covered by the foundation. We believe that financial circumstances should never prevent extraordinary talent from being developed." Andre found his voice at last. "I don't know what to say." Mr. Patterson smiled. "You've already said everything you needed to through your music. The rest is just details." He handed Leona a business card. "Call my office next week and we'll start the process." As Mr. Patterson walked away, Andre turned to his mother, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Mom, did that really just happen?" "Berklee College of Music?" Leona laughed, a sound of pure joy. "It really did. And you deserve every bit of it." Later that night, after a celebratory dinner with the band at a local restaurant, Andre and his mother walked home together through the quiet streets. The spring air was cool but not cold, and stars glittered overhead in a clear sky. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Leona asked, noticing her son's thoughtful expression. Andre was quiet for a moment. "I was just thinking about that day in the park. If I hadn't gotten up the courage to ask Roy if I could try the piano, if he had said no, if the band hadn't been so kind." "Life is full of those moments," Leona said softly. "Little decisions that change everything. I never imagined any of this, Andre continued. Wellington, the showcase, Berkeley. It feels like a dream sometimes, but it's not, his mother reminded him. It's real, and you've worked incredibly hard for it. They walked in silence for another block before Andre spoke again. The cardboard keyboard is still in my closet. I kept it. Leona looked surprised. Really? Why? Andre shrugged. To remember. To remind myself where I started and how far I've come. He paused. And to remind myself that sometimes the most important thing is just having the courage to ask for what you want, even when it seems impossible. As they reached their apartment building, the same one they'd lived in 2 years ago, though Leona had recently been promoted at the hospital and was talking about moving to a better place soon, Andre looked up at the night sky. Do you think there are other kids out there? Like me, I mean. Kids with dreams who just need someone to give them a chance? I know there are, Leona said. That's why your story matters. Maybe someday someone will hear about the boy with the cardboard keyboard, and it will give them the courage to take their own first step. Andre nodded, thinking about the journey ahead, the summer program at Berkeley, his continued studies, at Wellington, all the music yet to be played. But he was also thinking about the journey behind him, about how a simple question asked on a summer day had changed the course of his life. Can I try your piano? Those 5 words had opened a door to a future he never could have imagined, and through that door he had found not just his talent but his purpose, his passion, his place in the world. As they climbed the stairs to their apartment, Andre made a silent promise to himself. Someday, when another young person with dreams asked him for a chance, he would remember how it felt to be on the other side of that question, and he would say yes.